Welcome to Alan Skorsky Reports. I'm Alan Skorsky. We are coming on 4 months of the Trump administration and watching with lightning speed his administration's efforts to punch back hard against anti-Semitism, particularly Islamist and Palestinian-inspired anti-Semitism. From threats to withholding billions of dollars in aid to universities, to revoking green cards from foreign students engaging in harassment of Jews and support of terrorism. According to all studies and groups monitoring anti-Semitism, it is clear that we are witnessing and experiencing today is parallel to 1930s Nazi Germany, and I think it's worse. But we'll delve into that shortly. Today's guest is Wayne Kopping, the award-winning director of the documentary Tragic Awakening, which discusses and explores the roots of anti-Semitism following October 7th, and turning hatred into strength for Jewish identity and Western values. The film features Rawan Osman, a Syrian-born Muslim woman who was indoctrinated by Hezbollah to hate Jews, but is now an ardent pro-Zionist activist who I understand recently converted to Judaism. Mr. Kopping's past documentaries include Obsession, Israel Inside, and The Third Jihad, which have been viewed by millions of people across the world. Mr. Director, welcome and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be on your show. Thank you.
Okay, so you know what? I watched the movie a few days ago. Very important. And I've been saying this since October 7th, or actually a little bit beyond that, that what we're seeing today rivals what happened in Nazi Germany. And I'm going to give a few examples. You know, back then, Germany, Hitler had this grand Aryan master plan. Get rid of the Jews. Again, he has a whole thing, but the slogan was, I guess, Germany for the Germans. Evil, but okay, we know where it came from. What we're experiencing today is a 40 to 50 year program that's been going on since the 70s and 80s. And today we have thousands and thousands of Palestinianists who have traveled from thousands of miles away from the Middle East to come to America to attack us. That, to me, is what is unprecedented. And worse, that's become normalized and mainstreamed.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think you're correct, but I think the thesis of our film is that we don't even have to just look at Nazi Germany. What we're seeing is something that's been happening for the last 3,500 years of Jewish history, from the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians, the Persian Empire. The villains, so to speak, they always change. Their names change, their methodology changes, but the hate is always the same. And that's what this film, Tragic Awakening, is all about. We're saying that what we're seeing now is not something that's unique. It's unique in the way it's happening, but it's not unique in the fact that it is happening. And we ask the question, why? Why does this tiny, small little nation that's trying its best to do its best keep on getting murdered, massacred, sidelined, maligned? Is there something about us, or is there something outside of us? And that's what this film explores.
Right. So again, I agree with that. And again, when I was using the Nazism, yes, we know anti-Semitism has always existed, but who from us can understand what the Spanish Inquisition was, or what Martin Luther was? We know Nazism, first of all, our parents, our grandparents, and all the movies, and because you have neo-Nazis today. But what I'm thinking today is, and again, I say this, I'm 62. My parents were both born in France. They were hidden during the war. And I remember when I was little, they would say it could happen again. And I thought, okay, that's, Holocaust trauma talk. It's never going to happen again. Because I said, in America, this could never happen.
Right.
But oh my God. And I'm a very, very optimistic person. No more. I believe that our days are numbered. The fact that it can be mainstreamed on college campuses, you have a major political party, not the Greens, not a fringe leftist, but a mainstream political party that has mainstreamed and normalized the Palestinianist cause. And you have a media who's advancing that narrative. How did we Jews, how did we supporters of Israel, how did we allow the narrative to be hijacked by people where they have now become the victims as they actually are the perpetrators?
I'm actually writing an article about this as we speak. And I fear the answer isn't something that people are going to want to hear. You know, we have to ask, if you ask the average American college student or even the average American, what is our claim to the land? Well, let me ask you, what would the average American say is our claim to the land?
You know what? The average American wouldn't know. The informed American would say that it's Jews have always lived there. You know, you can hear it from the evangelicals, but you also hear from our supporters in Congress that Jews have always been in Israel. Israel is the only democracy, shared values. I mean, again, those are the cookie cutter answers. I accept them
Right.
because they're sincere. But the narrative has been occupation. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah. So let me just follow on from that. So they'll give all the answers you cited, and then if they're really astute, they'll say Thiel Commission, Balfour Commission, you know, the League of Nations, so on and so forth. So there's legal precedent. And you know, even you used a very interesting phrase. In fact, you used the fact that we always lived there. So the
That makes us
thesis that I
indigenous, as opposed to
well,
as opposed
correct,
to
but is
colonialists.
that so? The question is that enough of a claim? In other words, this is the question is, do we have a stronger claim than just being indigenous? And so, of course, the question comes down to, well, where else could it be? And you know, the uncomfortable question then becomes, is you have to say the T word. You know, is it in the Torah? Right? Is the Torah a legitimate document? And I'm not asking this as a religious question. I'm asking this as a fundamental type of question, because if the Torah is a legitimate document, well, then it says that Abraham bought Hebron, and it tells us how much he paid for it. It tells us that Jacob bought Shechem, which is where what the Arabs call Nablus today. And we know that there were two temples that stood where the Dome of the Rock is right now, and so on and so forth. In other words, the Arabs take seriously our biblical claim to the land, because that's where they have planted their cities and their religious buildings, the Dome of the Rock. And so they recognize those as historically Jewish areas. The question is, do the Jews recognize those as historically Jewish areas? The Arabs take the Torah seriously. The question is, do the Jews? And again, I'm not asking this as a religious question. I'm asking this as a question of identity, because the only way an American college student can be asked or accused of stealing land and not shrink into oblivion is if that he or she actually knows, like, hang on a second, we have a literal deed in this document that actually became the foundation not only of the other great world religions, but this is the document that's the bedrock of Western civilization. So I think, my opinion, I'm only representing myself when I say this, so only I can get into trouble. And that is that I think it's coming down to this question. And when a Jew knows exactly what it says in the book, who Rashi is, who Ramban is, what the words actually are, they become invincible, because you can't convince someone that they stole something that they know that they own, any more than I can tell you that you stole your shirt or your glasses and you know that you purchased those, you know, yourself. So I think that's the next question. That's the next evolution, I think, of what we're going to be seeing in the Jewish world. And that's why I'm actually hopeful. I'm hopeful because we are actually seeing a new generation of Jews. And I don't mean young Jews. I mean even Jews who are older, who are actually taking a look at these questions, and they know who Rashi is. They know what the first Rashi says. They know where these places are. They can read it in the Hebrew. They can understand it. And I think that makes our enemies very, very, very scared. In other words, I'll finish up with this question, really. So they call us occupiers. And so you can ask the question back and you can say, hang on a second. Al-Aqsa Mosque is built on the site of the two temples. Now, the Jews were exiled 2,000 years ago. The temple was destroyed 2,000 years ago. That was 500 odd years before Islam even began, right? Our temples were destroyed before Islam even began. And then another 150 years or so after that, that's when they built their religious sites on our religious sites. So you have to ask the question, who's occupying whom? Who's occupying whom? And when you can ask that question, why did you build your religious site on our religious site? So on one hand, they recognize that our site is a legitimate religious biblical site, but at the same time, they deny that there was ever any Jewish connection to the land at all. And the only reason that they can get away with that paradox, that conundrum, that lie, really, is because most Jews don't actually know what you and I have just spoken about. They don't know that, oh, that's where the two temples were, even before Islam even began. Hang on a second. You're occupying our land. So I think that's, once we start to understand that simple but so fundamental idea, everything changes. Everything changes, because the American Jew is not going to be someone that's going to be weak and have to reach for indigenousness, if that's even a word, or the Peel Commission or the League of Nations. Because if the League of Nations can give it to us, the United Nations can take it away from us. But if it's written in this book, and this book hasn't changed, at least in the Hebrew text, it hasn't changed for 3,500 years, it's a different conversation.
You see, the answer you gave now, to me, that places in a conversation, a round table with intellectuals, people seeking the truth, to confront the average dum-dum. I'll give you an example. I went to Wayne State University in Detroit in the 80s. I came there from yeshiva. First thing I saw was in the activism circle was Free Mandela. And I was like, who's Mandela and why isn't he free? Okay, and that's what I asked. Okay, that I found out. Free Palestine. It does two lies there. One, it gives the person the idea that there is a Palestine, and worse, that it's being under siege. So there are two lies in that phrase. When people were marching and saying from the river to the sea, so I watch Fox News, and you have the host saying, can you tell us, they would hold a microphone to the student, which river, which sea? I don't know. So these are the dum-dums being recruited by the Mahmoud Khalils and the other thousands of Palestinianists who have come here from foreign countries, funded by others, choreographed by others, with the game plan of death to America and death to Israel. This is, there was a recent video by Niwad something, from Council of American Islamic Relations. And he was laying out the timetable. In 5 years, we're going to have this, 10 years, and it's all about how Muslims are going to take over. And they will then own the narrative. And this, to me, is to me, anti-Semitism, the anti-Semite is the guy who drives by and screams out Jew out their window. What is happening today, Hitler to me was not anti-Semitic. He was an evil, murderous monster who hated Jews. The people today are his ancestors. Anti-Semitism, that's like the weakest thing you can call them. They are trying to destroy us by destroying us in America, which is the strongest link. Europe is already gone. They've already sold the Jews in Israel out. America is their next target.
But here's the question. What if we're giving the dum-dums and the Islamists more credit than they actually deserve? And what if we're actually giving them more power than they actually have? In other words, the power of, as you call them, the dum-dums, and let's call them the dum-dums and the Islamists, their power is in direct proportion to our ignorance. Their power is in direct proportion to our strength of identity and our strength of knowledge. And I'll tell you a funny story, okay? First of all, I'm not a big Trump advocate. I'm not a Trump representative, but I tell a story. I say, like, Trump ruined my movies twice, okay? And I say it like lightheartedly. How so? The first movie, we were making a film called Kids Chasing Paradise about the radicalization of children in ISIS. And halfway through making this film, we spent almost 2 years making this film, multiple countries, shooting. Someone said, what if ISIS disappears? And I was like, ISIS aren't going anywhere. They're just growing. several months into Trump's administration, somehow quietly ISIS just fizzled out, and that was good for the world, but bad for my movie, because now my movie no longer had the relevance that it had only a few months before, right? So how did that happen? How did this force that we thought was indestructible, it just disappeared? And I'll give you one other small example is Rawan Osman. She was speaking at Columbia a few weeks ago, and we were almost certain there were going to be protests. In fact, we even had cameras there to capture the protests. And the true, controversy is good for PR, and you can show this is what's going on in America. But it was a week or so after Trump's federal ban, and guess what? No protests. So it was bad for the PR of the film, but great for Rawan to be able to give her message over without being shouted out. So what it comes down to, and I think this is the other principle of the film, is the film speaks about there are 10 principles that undergird all of Western society and makes the distinction between what's good and what's evil. And those are the 10 commandments. And you can call them 10 commandments. You can even call them 10 principles. Now, I'm not saying that Trump believes in all 10 commandments. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that there's a principle that he was applying somehow that is aligned with those 10 commandments, those 10 principles. And when you assert that principle, the enemies their strength just dissipates, like we saw with ISIS and we saw with these college. Now, the job isn't over. We still have, throughout all of Africa, we have Jamaat al-Islamiyah, and we got all these other
Boko Haram
groups. Boko Haram, thank you. That's what I'm looking for. Thank you. Up North Africa, and we've got the radicals and the dum-dums in America. So we still have work to do. But the idea is the strength of the enemies is not as great as we think, and with the right pressure, it disappears. And that's, I think, the call of the hour is to a return to principle. Some airplanes flying ahead. If we can return to these principles, it sucks all the oxygen out of the room. It sucks the oxygen out of the Islamists and the dum-dums ideology, because there's only. You can't go on TV and speak about, I saw the Easter Bunny the other day, and the Easter Bunny is real. Like, there's only so far you can get with that kind of a fallacy. So there's only so far you can get with Zionism is racism, and free Palestine, and all those things when the truth is understood by so many people, including and especially American Jews.
Okay, so you spoke about the truth, and I'll tell you why I'm glad you did. Because I have long said, we can tell the truth all we want, but we're being outmaneuvered and outnumbered by over 1 billion people. There are 15 million Jews in the world, and we have our millions of Christian allies. That's fine. You've got 1.5 billion Muslims in the world, and I'll say at least 70% of them. Yeah. I look at Europe. I look at Canada. And I see America, again, I live here. I remember, I know you're disagreeing with me, so I'll say my thing and then you'll shoot me down.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I hear what you're saying.
At the Democrat convention this past summer, when Joe Biden, president of the United States, who has been a friend of, he's got Jewish friends, he's got them. He said that some of the protesters have a point. When you had new people running to be the new chairman of the Democratic Party, and at least 2 of them said, including someone I think may even be Jewish, that they would have allowed a Hamas supporter to speak at the convention. This is why I am very scared. Because remember, in the 80s, there was no Palestinian Authority. It was Arafat, the PLO. They were terrorists, and they were recognized and designated as terrorists around the world and the West. Today, you have France ready to recognize Palestine. I think it's very changed. The dynamics, social media, everything is much different than it was before. Now go ahead and shoot me down. I'm okay with it.
No, it's not a question of shooting down. It's a question of degrees. Yes, there's 1.25 billion Muslims. Yes, the large percentage of them are hostile to the Jews and to the United States. But that's not the fulcrum around which all of this is going to revolve. It's going to revolve around whether we, as the Jewish people, understand these very fundamental things. And I think you and I can both agree that most Jews do not understand or appreciate or even know these fundamental things. What I just said earlier about the dome of Al-Aqsa Mosque on the side of the two temples, I think that would be news to many American Jews. So again, the degree to which we understand these things is the degree to which we will be, I don't want to say invincible, but we will be successful. And we've seen this throughout history. And I'll give you one small example. So I did a screening a few days ago at Duke University in Durham, Raleigh, North Carolina. And so I was asking them about their experiences with the protests. And they said there were some, but not as many as other campuses. And so I was trying to interrogate why and get into why. And what I started to understand that there was such a strong Jewish presence. I don't mean Jewish, right? Like Seinfeld Jewish, right? Jewish. There was a Jewish presence. They had, at the Chabad house, they had a Seder for 300 Jews. Can you imagine that? 300 students, a Seder. Was one, maybe it was even both nights. I can't exactly remember. They were laying tefillin in front of the protesters. They were loud, they were proud, but they were doing Jewish things. When I went into the Chabad house, a bunch of students, not religious students, but they were learning with someone. They were learning the Mishnah Pirkei Avot, right? So then the question then becomes, is that an anomaly? And what they were saying, and I think that there's something to it, is that when you have weak Jews, you have got strong protesters. When you've got strong Jews, you're going to have weak protesters. Now that sounds counterintuitive. You think, oh, if I'm a recognizable Jew, then I've got a target on my head, right? And so I'll be more of a target. But somehow we see that that's not how things actually work. The opposite is actually true. So in other words, here's the point that I'm trying to make, is that we're in a situation now, 2025, where we've tried everything. We've tried diplomacy, we've tried land for peace, we've tried, yes, negotiating with Arabs, we've tried not negotiating with Arabs, we've tried giving them land, we've tried taking land away. We've tried everything, and none of it's worked.
Right.
None of it. We have failed dramatically, right? And so the only thing left to try is the only thing that maybe we should be looking at, which is a Jewish response to a Jewish problem, a spiritual response to a supernatural problem. And I'm not saying that people need to run out and start keeping Shabbat and keeping kosher and put on a kippah, but I'm saying a little something, like light candles on a Friday night. Bring this idea of the Torah into the equation. At least ask the question. You can fight against the Torah, you can argue with it, you can not agree with it, you can dislike what it says, but at least have some sort of engagement with it. Once that engagement, I think, is all that is needed to make that shift. Because I think from a Jewish perspective, that's all, from what I understand. I'm not a rabbinical authority. This is just my understanding and what I've learned. That's what the creator of time, space, and dimension, who gave us the spiritual land for spiritual reasons, to fix the world and to fix ourselves, he just wants to not be ignored. He refuses to be ignored. Before the war, in the Second World War, he was not only ignored, but they said Berlin is our new Jerusalem. Now, I don't know, none of us know why the Holocaust happened, but all we know is that when he's ignored, not good things happen. And when he's not ignored, other good things happen, let's say. And it might sound oversimplistic, but maybe it is just as simple as that. Maybe like Jews being Jewish is not such a controversial idea.
You know what? I love what you're saying, and this again, it's all part of the Achdus thing. You see in Israel how many soldiers who weren't religious, wearing tzitzis, putting on tefillin. On my Facebook, every Friday night, I always put a post saying, it doesn't matter if you're a Sabbath observer or not, just light candles is a blessing. And I give my things to be grateful for and stuff like that.
Beautiful.
And I have a few friends who are not religious. I have a few who I know, who will light, whether they do it before, during Shabbos, but whatever it is, they're conceptualizing it.
And that's the whole point. Sorry to interrupt you. I'm sorry, Ali. You brought up something so beautiful. I think from what we understand, that's the whole point of anti-Semitism. The mechanism of anti-Semitism from a biblical perspective is that when we stray from our purpose, it's a way of bringing us back in line. So we know with our kids, we say to our kids, you can do things the nice way or the not nice way. So if they do things the nice way, in other words, if they come home, they do their homework, they clean their room, there's no reason to punish them. You're not going to walk in the room, oh, you cleaned your room, I'm going to punish you. It's a mechanism. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Anti-Semitism is not a punishment, as from what I understand. It's a consequence. It's a mechanism of reframing. And if we are already reframing ourselves, then we don't need the Arabs or the Nazis or the liberals or whoever it is to reframe us. Because we're saying, yes, we're Jewish, but we're also American and we're South African. And they're saying, no, you're a Jew. So yes, I'm Jewish, but I'm also this, I'm always, they say, no, you're a Jew. And I want to kill you. I want to kill you because of X, Y, and Z reason. Those reasons change. So so what you're saying is like the whole discussion now, the only reason we're having this chat is because anti-Semitism rose its head and now people are talking about it. That's exactly what it's for. And so now next time, because we're having these discussions and because of these posts that you put on Facebook, it pushes back the next attack. And I'll just end up with this one idea that if you look at, I don't know how many thousands of rockets have been lobbed into Israel over the last, let's call it decade.
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. How few have actually done significant damage? An incredibly minuscule number. I was in Israel during the Iran attack when there were 300 ballistic missiles and drones and all those kind of things. And I think it was one Arab man or one Arab woman was killed by shrapnel. But so you look at these things, say, oh, they're all coincidences. Or you can say tens of thousands with practically zero casualties, practically, statistically. Either it's a coincidence, either Iron Dome is just amazing, or there's something miraculous happening. I'm an optimist. I like to think there's something miraculous happening. And was it Ben Gurion? You'll correct me. Was it Ben Gurion who said something like, any Jew who doesn't believe in miracles isn't being a realist, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a Gurianism.
Yeah, like we are the people of miracles.
Right.
Like at the Pesach Seder that we just had, it's called a Seder, means an order, right? But as someone once pointed out, at the Pesach Seder, which means order, we're discussing miracles. Like we're the only people that discuss miracles as a matter of the nature, as a matter of order. It's like the miracles and the currency for miracles are, from what I understand, I'm not an authority, people can argue with me, the currency for a miracle is a connection with these ideas that we've been speaking about. That's it.
Let me ask you a few more questions because I know you gotta go. It's also you've got a full day schedule. How many universities? I mean, has that been your target audience, the universities, or is it also shuls and stuff like that? What's been your prime target? How's the reception been? And as far as the Q&A goes, have you gotten some really good questions that say, that's a very good point?
So first of all, Q&A is a misnomer when you're speaking to a Jewish audience, because it's like, does anyone have a statement they'd like to make?
Right.
So I joke. We set out an almost impossible goal, and the degree to which we've succeeded is for people to decide. But the goal that we set ourselves was we wanted to make a film that a Jew who is observant, not observant, atheist, antagonistic, any of those types of Jews could watch this and not freak out. Also, people who are not Jewish, whether they're Christian or atheist or Methodist or even Muslim, could watch it and not freak out. And I've made other films that you pointed out where a lot of people freak out all the time about everything. But we haven't seen major freakouts in a bad way about what we're saying, because what we're saying in this film, I think we're just trying to bring a sense of clarity. Someone once said to me, he said, this film isn't a documentary, it's a diagnosis. It's a diagnosis of a festering problem. And people recognize that diagnosis. Now, once you've got the diagnosis, how do you treat it? So that's the conversation that we're having now. But we've found that people have been very receptive. And the messaging after the film is along the lines of what you and I have been speaking about right now. I spoke with an audience last night, predominantly non-Jewish audience. And it resonated with these ideas. And I think by definition, the only people that this film will really upset are the people that are not aligned with these foundational principles that are in the Ten Commandments, but they're also Western principles. So if you're against the West, you're going to be against the movie and you're going to be against the Jews. And those are the, what do you call them, dum-dums and the Islamists. So, but everyone else is our target audience.
Wonderful. How many campuses have you been on so far, if you're keeping a
So
tally?
I've just started my American tour. I'm going to be doing another one campus. The reason I'm not saying the name is because there
Security.
might be a shift. There might be a shift. But when Rawan and Raphael Shore were on tour,
Sure.
they hit, I want to say, at least 10 or 15 campuses. And we're going to be doing a lot more in the future. We're also doing online screenings, and we haven't got our international distribution locked up yet, but we're hoping to get some sort of theatrical and or Netflix distribution. So if you have any friends at Netflix, let me know. But
I'm a subscriber.
okay.
I can say
Okay,
I'm paying $30 a month. I bring all my family. You owe me.
That's right. Yeah. So so if anyone else,
Right.
so that's what we're working on. But to have these intimate conversations and these intimate screenings has been so rewarding, to actually hear the feedback and get the questions and discuss it like you and I are right now.
Right. I know that the trailer is available on Amazon on YouTube. I'm sorry.
Right.
So
right.
that's one way to start. But again, it's a great movie. I highly recommend for everybody. And again, it's a topic we could talk about for hours on end.
That's right. And we have an online screening, so sorry to interrupt,
Go ahead.
at tragicawakening.com this Sunday. There's going to be an online screening, 1 p.m. Eastern. It's free.
I saw that.
So,
I'm going to post it. I saw that.
okay, amazing. Thank you. So that's timely.
Good. Okay. Mr. Director, it's been
Thank you
an
so
honor
much,
to
Alan.
meet you. I want to wish you
Likewise.
continued Hatzlacha on your trip. I know you're from South Africa. God
That's
bless.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Have a great Shabbos.